Good morning. How is everybody doing this morning? Well, it may not be morning. It may not be morning when you see this, but I hope that everyone's day is going pretty good. I just got off work and it is about 7:27, and I had a friend send me this little story here on yesterday, and I wanted to share it because I thought it was so cool. So I'm going to put on my readers. Ooh, these are dirty. Hopefully I can see. Yeah, I can see. All right. Let's see. In stage. Oh, never mind. Okay, so the Gospel of John tells us that the napkin which was placed over the face of Jesus was not just thrown aside like the grave clothes. The Bible takes an entire verse to tell us that the napkin was neatly folded and was placed at the head of that stony coffin. Early Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb to find that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. She said, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and I don't know where they have put him." Peter and the other disciple ran to the tomb to see. The other disciple outran Peter and got there first. He stooped and looked in and saw the linen cloth lying there, but he didn't go in. Then Simon Peter arrived and went inside. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying to the side. Is that important? Absolutely. Is it really significant? Yes. In order to understand the significance of the folded napkin, you have to understand a little bit about Hebrew tradition of that day. The folded napkin had to do with the master and servant, and every Jewish boy knew this tradition. When the servant set the dinner table for the master, he made sure that it was exactly the way the master wanted it. The table was furnished perfectly, and then the servant would wait, just out of sight, until the master had finished eating. And the servant would not dare touch that table until the master was finished. Now, if the master was done eating, he would rise from the table, wipe his fingers, his mouth, and clean his beard, and would wad up that napkin and toss it onto the table. The servant would then know to clear the table, because in those days, the wadded napkin meant I'm done. But if the master got up from the table and folded his napkin and laid it beside his plate, the servant would not dare touch the table, because the folded napkin meant, I'm coming back. He is coming back. I thought that was so cool. I started shouting when I read it, because it's so amazing. Detail that Jesus does things. And like it says here, every Jewish boy knew this tradition. So, it probably should have sparked something within the disciples and whomever else heard, like there was something significant about the way, because like it says, the grave clothes was just thrown aside, but that napkin that was put around the head, was folded up, and them knowing Jewish culture, knowing that anytime a napkin is folded means someone's coming back. So the parallel was for them to recognize that, hey, Jesus is coming back. Anyway, it's just so amazing, because it's like there's a lot of, when you read the Bible, there's a lot of Jewish culture going on that Jesus would like parallel what he did and relates to the Jewish culture. So a lot of times when he would speak, it would kind of bring into the remembrance of the Jewish culture, and that way it was kind of made more explainable, or not explainable, made more understandable for the people, because of the way he would parallel what he was. I mean, even when you think about the way the customs of when the man would want to marry a woman, and then he would have to go and prepare a house for him, and then he would get all that situated before he would take the woman as his wife. In Jewish tradition, Hebrew tradition. And so when you think of Jesus saying he's going to prepare a place for us, it's kind of the same, same concept. There's some more I wanted to kind of bring out. But like I say, I just got off work and I'm really tired, actually. I don't know why I'm so tired. Well, I do, because my husband told me I woke up too early yesterday instead of sleeping. And I worked a 12-hour shift instead of a 6-hour shift. So I guess it just snuck up on me. But, yeah, I wanted to... There was one that was just in my remembrance. I'm not going to think of it. When something's on, not the tip of your tongue, but it's like in your head, and you had it, the thought, and then now the thought is just like so far away, because your brain just like, I don't know. Anyway, y'all ever notice when I say anyway, I say anyway. I don't know if y'all noticed, but like when I'm editing my videos and I go back and I'm like, Karen, you should do sound country. I almost was fixing to say anyway. But anyway, I am going to pause the video and I'm going to try to find what I was talking about because I kind of want to share it with you. So give me a sec, guys. Be right back. Okay, guys, so I found something else I wanted to share. So in Matthew 27:51, we read that at that moment the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split. So at that moment the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Now, have you ever wondered what was significance about the veil being torn in two? Well, most people kind of know, it kind of meant that we didn't have to, or, not we, but, well, yeah, basically they didn't have to go through the high priest anymore, because only the high priests were allowed, sorry, only the priests were allowed to be at the Holy of Holies. So when it was torn in two, that was significant of now it being made possible that God was accessible for anyone to come and not have to have the priests, because people could go so far to be forgiven of their sins, and then it's the high priest that had to take it the extra step and enter into the Holy of Holies. But that's not it is kind of what I'm trying to share. But so we know it was torn in two, but why was it torn from top to bottom? See, that's what I'm talking about. It's little details like this, when you read it, you're just reading it, but it's like if you just stop and say, so yeah, okay, it was torn in two, but what's the significance from saying it was torn from top to bottom? Why not just leave it at it was torn in two? So let's find out. The veil was not a small curtain like you see in some movies. The veil was 60 feet long, 30 feet wide, and was 4 inches thick. The veil was so massive and heavy that it took 300 priests to manipulate it. An important point here is that no one could simply tear the veil themselves. It would take more than human strength to tear it. The analogy is that it took the mighty hand of God himself to tear it supernaturally, and this tearing, which represents the removal of the separation of God and man, could not be done by humans. It had to be done by God alone, and that's the point. No one can remove our separation from God but God himself. 1 John 2:2 says that he, Jesus, is the atoning sacrifice for our sins, and not only for ours, but also for the sins of the whole world. Since Jesus' death atoned for our sins, Jesus' sacrifice allowed for the veil to be torn, and thus the separation between God and man was able to be removed. The fact that the veil was torn from the top down, some 60 feet from the floor, where humans could not reach it, shows that God was the one that caused the veil to be torn. He is the initiator of the veil being rent. He is the cause of the tearing. He, in Jesus Christ, is the reason it was torn. It is no coincidence that the temple sacrifices by Jewish Christians ceased that year, and for the years to follow. Why? The sacrifices were stopped because of Jesus' offering of himself. The temple priest did not accept Jesus' sacrifice in place of the animal sacrifices, but believers in him did. The big book of Hebrews was written specifically to Jewish Christians, but the applications for us are the same. Hebrews chapter 10 reveals that no other sacrifices were given, at least by the Jewish Christians. Luke's account of the birth and early history of the church in the book of Acts never mentions any of the Christians continuing to sacrifice. They understand that the veil had been removed by Jesus' offering on the cross, and therefore there was no further need to provide sacrifices, even at Passover or on the Day of Atonement. The significance of the veil being torn from the top down and the fact that was torn is that Jesus' sacrifice makes it possible for us to come to God the Father. Our sins no longer separate us from him today. For those who put their trust in Jesus, we have access to God. 2 Corinthians 5:21 explains that God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. The fact is that Jesus himself was torn for our sakes. Isaiah 53. Our high priest today is Jesus Christ, who continues to intercede for the saints. This is one of the chief purposes for writing of the book of Hebrews, and makes the perfect conclusion of why the veil was torn and why it was torn from the top down. Jesus became a priest with an oath when God said to him that the Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever. Because of this oath, Jesus has become the guarantor of a better covenant. Now there have been many of those priests since death prevented them from continuing in office. But because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood. Therefore, he is able to save completely those who come to God through him, because he always lives to intercede for them. Such a high priest truly meets our need, one who is holy, blameless, pure, set apart from sinners, exalted above the heavens. Unlike the other high priests, he does not need to offer sacrifices day after day, first for his own sins and then for the sins of the people. He sacrificed for their sins once for all when he offered himself. For the law appoints as high priests men and all their weaknesses, but the oath which came after the law appointed the Son, who has been made perfect forever. Hebrews 7:20-28. All right. So I always, have read that and didn't really just see or just dwell on the fact that it was torn from top to bottom. But it's like when you read the word, you want to kind of get, you want to get an understanding of what's going on and why it's happening the way it's happening. And it just, when you get a background or get a history of why things were done a certain way and now why it's, it just all comes full circle, basically. So it's like the story I just shared with you. It's like, if you read it, and I'm sure many of us have read it, has anyone ever just stopped to wonder, well, why was the napkin, folded? The grave clothes thrown aside, but the napkin folded. And so now it makes perfect sense. because Jesus was trying to make a point. And it's like I said, his details, you know. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and soak in the tub. Perfectly, I won't fall asleep in there because I'm really tired, but I want to soak and soothe my achy body. It's not really achy, but I'm just feeling like pampering and want a bubble bath. So that's what I'm gonna do. So anyway, guys, thank you for taking the time out to watch my video. I hope you guys have a blessed day on today. Love, peace, and blessings.